What if the next life-saving storm warning was severely delayed, or never even was issued in the first place? For decades, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, otherwise known as NOAA, and the National Weather Service, NWS, have been our first line of defense against hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, and life-threatening severe weather events. But now, they are facing a crisis. On Thursday, February 27th, 2025, hundreds of staffers at NOAA and NWS were fired. These firings are occurring while about 50% of weather forecast offices under the NWS are not properly staffed. The NWS has been understaffed for years, as this report from the Senate Appropriations Committee came out in 2023. Prior to these cuts, NOAA had about 12,000 staffers. These layoffs are only expected to be about 5 to 10% of the total workforce. Now, I myself over the past few days on social media have seen a lot of comments from people claiming that, what's the big deal? It's only 5 to 10%. There's still plenty of people left, right? Well, we've seen over the last couple years, a couple different times, where due to these staffing issues across these weather forecast offices, there have been delays in getting very important warnings out to people. Just last November, in Oklahoma City, very early in the morning, there was a delay on important tornado warnings getting out due to staffing issues in Norman. Last year in Nebraska, a tornado went unwarned for quite some time north of North Platte, Nebraska. Sure, when the weather's not super active, an office may not need to be fully staffed. But when there is severe weather happening, it's all hands on deck. In addition to the normal functions that a meteorologist has at a National Weather Service office, they get really overwhelmed during severe weather events, especially when there's numerous storms going on in their forecast area. If an office is so understaffed that they may only have 1 or 2 people monitoring radar and issuing warnings, it's very likely, and we've already seen it happen in the past, that some storms may go unwarned for a bit of time. Now yes, it's been reported that many of these employees that were fired were in their probationary term. However, this probationary term is being widely miscued. The probationary term means that they've been in their position about 1 to 2 years. So, let's say we have somebody that's been working somewhere for about 10 years, they decide to go to a different department or different office, or get a promotion. They're then placed into a probationary period again for about 1 to 2 years. So, some long-term staffers and senior people at these offices have been fired due to this, due to those probationary terms. Some employees whose jobs was to improve processes to further enhance the mission of protecting lives and properties were fired. Zach Labe is one of them, whose job was to strengthen NOAA's use of machine learning and AI for subseasonal to decadal weather and climate prediction. Andy Hazelton is another one of the victims. He worked for the National Hurricane Center and was working on improving forecast models. Now don't get me wrong, I'm all for cutting government waste and government spending. It's been out of control for likely decades, and our national debt here in the United States is astronomical. However, due to the life-saving and free information that the National Weather Service and NOAA provides, I don't think this is an agency worth coming after, or at least to the extremes that it seems this might go. Let's just take a look at NOAA's and NWS budget. The total budget for NOAA is $6.1 billion. This includes $4.42 billion for NOAA operations, research, and facilities, otherwise known as ORF, and $1.69 billion in procurement, acquisition, and construction, otherwise known as PAC. This means that NOAA's budget as a percentage of the federal budget equates to around 0.094%. Meanwhile, the National Weather Service budget is $1.4 billion. This budget includes funding for upgrades to the Integrated Dissemination Program, IDP, and the Advanced Weather Interactive Processing System, otherwise known as AWIPS. NWS's percentage of NOAA's budget is around 20 to 25%. NWS as a percentage of the total U.S. federal budget is about 0.02%. The NWS costs taxpayers just about $4, about a cup of coffee. So as you can see, in total, the budgets for NOAA and NWS are not even really a drop in the bucket compared to the total federal budget. Not to mention the economic value that the National Weather Service brings in due to everything that they do. The most recent information that I could find is that the estimate of the benefit to the U.S. public of 2021 is about $102.1 billion of current forecast. Another argument that I've seen all over social media is that there's already private companies that exist. There's my weather app that I use. Oh, the private people and my weather app and the local news are so much more accurate than the NWS. Newsflash for you, all of that data that those private companies and those weather apps and all that use comes from NOAA and NWS, from all of NOAA and NWS's products, services, and data. Now sure, those private companies and those weather apps, they may do other things off of that data that help increase lead times and may be slightly more accurate. But once again, without all that data and information that comes from NOAA and the National Weather Service, they wouldn't even have that anyways. I think an argument that could be made from people that agree with what's happening is that private companies could just take all this data, tools, whatever that the National Weather Service and NOAA has and privatize it themselves. But how long would that take? We're quickly approaching severe weather season and another hurricane season. I think that would take a lot of time, and I think they would then charge you for a lot of that information, a lot of that data. Who's to say we wouldn't have to pay to get life-saving tornado warnings, severe storm warnings, flash flood warnings, really any type of weather? Because at the end of the day, it's a private company. They got to make profit somehow. And there's tons of this data out there from NOAA and NWS that's free to use for citizens, storm chasers, other news organizations, private companies, yada yada yada. So I think that's very dangerous. I don't think people should be having to pay to get these life-saving warnings. As a storm chaser and weather lover, my job would be much more difficult if it wasn't for all the data and information from the National Weather Service and NOAA. From looking at the Storm Prediction Center to monitor outlooks for where weather may be active, to using weather models and weather data to forecast my chases, to even using radar. It'd be much, much more difficult. Now, unfortunately, I don't really have any solutions to this. Even if I did, I'm kind of a no-name. Don't have any government power or anything like that. So what would it really matter, I guess? My thoughts and feelings on this, for those of you that may care, is I think this is a very, very dangerous and slippery slope. We've made a lot of progress since the 1950s when it comes to forecast, lead times, really just anything when it comes to weather. I think we might go backwards in some of that. I think due to the understaffing, we may have more storms and tornadoes that go unnoticed, unwarned, or delayed in their warnings, and that's going to be a huge public safety risk. I think also when it comes in terms of budgeting for research purposes of, the very, very quickly advanced developments of technology, I think that's going to hurt in trying to use these improvements to improve models, improve radar, improve, really just, once again, anything when it comes to weather. Now, I hope I'm really wrong on all this, but from what I've seen so far, that doesn't seem like it's going to be the case. I just think this is a very, very poorly thought out plan, cutting, slashing, firing, kind of whatever, especially when these agencies don't cost the taxpayer very much money, especially when you look at the total federal budget. I know I'm kind of reiterating a point here, but these agencies do so much for the public good. Their whole entire mission is to protect lives and properties. There is so much more that these agencies do with all types of weather, ranging from hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, wildfires, just to name a few, that really I don't think people understand the scope of what these agencies do to provide this life-saving information to the public free of charge. Well, I say free of charge, but it does cost us taxpayers money to fund them, but as I've shown in this video, the return on investment is astronomical compared to what it cost. Sorry, I know I'm repeating a lot of points. I know I'm trying to wrap this up, but I just wanted to make a couple more points before I do so. We've already seen some detrimental impacts from what's going on that are going to be devastating ahead of this tornado season that is very quickly approaching, and this hurricane season that's coming up that is forecast to be above average again. For example, weather balloon launches in Alaska have already been suspended due to these staffing issues. Now I know that may not seem like a very big deal, but it's important that weather balloons are launched all over the United States. That way we have that data to inject to the weather models, and so we know what that data is ahead of severe weather events, so we get a better understanding of what the atmosphere is truly like and what it's capable of doing. And this could spread to other states. Like I just mentioned, we need to know what the atmosphere is actually doing. So it wouldn't surprise me as time moves forward, other offices suspend their balloon launches as well. Well, I hope I've touched on all the points, highlights, things that I've wanted to say for the most part. I'm sure I've missed a few. I've been trying to go back through and see if there's any, but I think it's about time to wrap this up. My last kind of call to action, so to speak, will be if you are irritated, upset, angry about this, I highly suggest reaching out to your government officials, Congress, Senate, state officials, really whatever the case may be, and try to let your voices be heard that you think the National Weather Service, NOAA, should not be going through this, should not be having these budget cuts, should not be having these staffing shortages, should not be having these layoffs and firings. And, I get it from you people that agree with this. Like I said, I agree with we need to cut down the government spending, government waste, all of that stuff. Once again, I just don't think this agency is where we need to be looking for any of that. I've provided the facts of the budget, how much it costs taxpayers, how much the return on investment is, all the life-saving stuff and everything. And my final thought on this, I know this is a super heated hot topic right now, and unfortunately it does involve politics, and I've always steered clear of politics for my channel. That being said, I know there's going to be some crazy comments on this from both sides of the aisle, from both opinions, whether you agree or disagree. All I ask is that you try to remain respectful and courteous to myself and any others that may comment. Take care, everybody.